Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for stopping by today. Today I am super excited to share the brand new Essentials by Ellen release. These stamps and dies are available exclusively at ellenhudson.com, and I'll have links to the supplies in the description at YouTube, so be sure to check that out. Starting with this sock monkey surprise stamp set. I love that adorable sock monkey. And that stamp set coordinates beautifully with this bearwear stamp set. Although the bearwear stamp set, I believe, was designed to coordinate with the all inside stamp set that was released from Ellen Hudson at the end or beginning of last year. I can't remember. My years are running together. In addition, there's a couple of sentiment stamp sets. There's the Warm Fuzzies, adorable like typewriter type font here, as well as the Lovely stamp set. Now, this is a really elegant sentiment stamp set, but there are stamps for every occasion in here, and that's why I love it. I have a couple of cards over at my blog featuring this Lovely stamp set as well. Now, next up, we have the Stay Salty stamp set. Now, this kind of has like a sea kind of ocean theme, sailboats and kind of life rafts and anchors. This is really, I've seen some great samples with this, and I really can't wait to try it out. And this makes for some great masculine cards. So I think this would be something great to pick up and have in your stash for those masculine cards, because I know we all have problems creating those. Now today I'm going to be using the Stay Golden stamp set. I love me a good pineapple stamp set, and Julie has outdone herself on this. Check out these fonts, y'all. These are awesome. I love it, and I love the whimsical design of those pineapples. Now, the Mondo stamps, the Mondo flower stamp sets have been some of my favorites in the past releases, and this one does not disappoint. This is the Mondo Peony stamp set. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. This just went up to #1 in the Mondo line in my book. I mean, seriously, I could think of a million ways to color that gorgeous flower. Now, a couple of standalone dies here. This is the Silver Linings die set. I love that those rays just kind of emboss in the paper. And then there's the Sunshine Words die set as well. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be using the Stay Golden stamp set and the coordinating dies today. I'm going to be using those awesome pineapples as well as that sentiment that says, stand tall, be sweet on the inside, and wear a crown. I just love that. Such a great kind of fun, encouraging card for another woman in your life. I just love it. And I actually ended up making like 8 of these cards. Because I love that sentiment so much, and I love these pineapples. So I'm starting out with the sentiment. I am going to emboss it on a strip of the Essentials by Ellen vellum. This is a heavyweight vellum, and since I'm embossing, I started by prepping the surface with my EK Success powder tool, and now I'm inking up that sentiment with some VersaFine Onyx black ink. Now, since this is a pigment ink, I can emboss with it. It's going to stay wet on even cardstock, not just the vellum, but it will stay wet on cardstock so that you can emboss. And instead of using a black embossing powder, which can kind of leave some messy results, I'm using a clear over that black ink, and that gives me a really nice clean black embossed image, and it's nice and shiny. So I wanted to show you a few different ways to kind of do some foil accents with stamping today, and I have a few options for you today. And the first one is using some Wow bonding powder. Now, this is kind of a sticky embossing powder that you can apply like glitter or flocking on top of, but I wanted to try it with some foil, and I tried a few different things, and this is the method that I found works the best with this embossing or bonding powder for the Wow. Now, I've prepped my surface. This is just some Nina Solar White cardstock. I prepped it with my EK Success powder tool. I stamped my images. This is just kind of the overlay sketch image of the pineapple. I've stamped those onto the Nina Solar White using some Versamark, and then I coated it with that Wow bonding powder, and now I'm just heat setting it. Now, you just want to heat set this until it's melted. Don't overheat this because it can lose some of its stick. And once I got that melted onto the cardstock, I'm going to run it through my Mink machine. So I am just adding a little bit of foil, pretty side up, over the top of my stamped kind of, I guess, embossed images, but it has that bonding powder, embossing powder, so it's a little bit sticky. And I'm going to place that into my Mink carrier sheet with that foil right over the top. Then I am going to run this through my Mink machine, and I am using the Mink Mini today. You can use the full-size Mink. You could probably use a laminator. I like the Mink because I have a little bit more control over the heat. Here I'm using a 3 setting, which I find works pretty well for the Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock, which is what I'm using today. And once I've ran those through, I can pull this off, and you can see I have some beautifully embossed images there. Now, what I find with this bonding powder is that it tends to spread out and the lines tend to get a little bit wider when you run it through the Mink, but it does give great results. But you may not want to try this on like a real thin lined like sentiment or something like that, because I just don't think the results are really good. Now, this pineapple overlay image is really forgiving because it's kind of sketchy in the first place. Now, once I got the foil applied to those, I went ahead and stamped the solid image rather than doing the solid image first and having the embossing powder stick to that as I was trying to emboss over it. I went ahead and just stamped the solid image after I applied the foil. And then I just gently wiped off any ink that was laying over top of the foil. Now, for the second method here, I'm using another embossing powder that's sticky. This is the Ranger brand sticky embossing powder. What I did with this one, I was just kind of experimenting. I heated up the embossing powder just till it melted, and then I quickly added the foil over the top of it and just kind of burnished it on there. I didn't get really great clean results with this, so I went ahead and just heat set the rest of those and ran them through my Mink machine just like I did the other. Now, I personally preferred the Ranger sticky powder over the Wow bonding powder, and it was just because of the texture of the powder. It was a little bit finer grind and a little bit easier to work with, but you can see the results are pretty similar. You're going to get that spreading of the lines, so like I said, you probably wouldn't want to use this on a really detailed sentiment or something like that. Now, another method that you can do is using the Mink toner pen. Now, I stamped it once at the top of that paper there using the Mink toner pen, and I didn't get a really great coverage because this image is pretty big, and by the time I covered the entire thing, a little bit of it had kind of dried up. So I decided to go ahead and use this with my Misty, and I am going to do a double stamping using this Mink toner pen. So I'm coating the entire stamp, and then I'm going to stamp it onto my Nina Solar White cardstock and press it on there really good. And then I'm going to open it back up. I'm going to leave my paper in the exact same position, and I'm going to coat that stamp once again with this Mink toner pen. So I found that kind of bouncing this pen onto the image gave me a little bit more coverage. But the great thing about this pineapple image that I said before is that it's kind of got a sketchy look to it anyway, so it's kind of forgiving for a technique like this. So once again, I'm just coating that entire image. I'm stamping it on there again, so I have a double stamping of that Mink toner ink onto my paper. And then I'm going to place this stamp side up with the foil on top of it, and the foil goes pretty side up, or the silver part goes down facing your stamped image. I'm going to put it into my Mink carrier sheet and then just run it through my mini Mink once again. I'm using the 3 setting, and you can see I have my clipboard underneath that just to protect my mat from warping, because the Mink does give off quite a bit of heat and those mats do warp. I've done it before many times. And you can see I got a much finer line using that toner pen. So just as I did before, I'm going to stamp my solid image over the foiled image, just kind of like you would do with an emboss resist technique. I'm going to press that on there. By the way, the pink ink I'm using is Guava, and the yellow ink I'm using is Warm Sunshine. The Warm Sunshine is from Altenew, and the Guava ink is from Lawn Fawn. Now, the thing that you do have to be careful with is when you buff the ink off of that foiled image, because you can remove a little bit of the foil. If I had to do it again, I would use a much softer cloth. I used a paper towel there, and I would just gently buff over the surface. Now, I wanted to show you, you could create this same look with some gold embossing powder, and that's what I'm doing here. but you don't get the same amount of shine that you do with the foiling. And so I just wanted to give you an alternative. If you don't have the foiling supplies, that's okay. You can still have gold accented pineapples with a little bit of gold embossing powder, and you can see that image there. So once I got all of my pineapples created, I did a variety of the foiled ones with the different techniques. And then I did a couple with the gold embossing powder as well. I'm going to stamp the rest of my images here. And this is the topper. I like to call it the headdress of the pineapple because I'm not sure if it's leaves or a stem or whatever. But I stamped those in jalapeno ink from Lawn Fawn, and then I used the coordinating dies to cut out all of my images. So you can see this is the foiled version here. This is the version using gold embossing powder, so you don't get quite the same amount of shine as you do with the foil. I'm going to hold these two pink ones up side by side, and you can see the foiled one is on the left and the gold embossing powder on the right. Both are beautiful, but I love that foiling, and I was bound and determined to find a way to get that foil accent on these pineapples. And I think that toner pen was the best way to do it in the end. So now I'm going to take that smaller pineapple here and I'm inking the bottom part of it with the warm sunshine ink and the top part of it with the jalapeno ink. I'm just being very careful as I ink those. And I'm also going to stamp some of the flowers from the stamp set as well. I'm using a purple ink there, but I ended up using like the guava ink and an orange ink in the end. So once I have all of my images cut out, I have pineapples, I have flowers, I'm going to start assembling the card. And I started out by cutting a banner end into my sentiment strip. And then I took that over and I sewed it onto my card front using a little bit of gold thread. I just use a regular sewing machine. I don't do anything fancy. In fact, my sewing machine's broken right now, so I'm just turning the wheel of it to make it work. And I'm just using a basic stitch with some gold thread. I put that on there, and then I arranged my images kind of around that sentiment area there. And I used varying heights of foam adhesive to apply those onto my card front so that I had different depths. I attached a piece of black and white striped pattern paper along the edge of that card front. And then I put a little bit of fun foam behind that to add some dimension to the card front. And I attached that to a Essentials by Ellen white linen cardstock card base. Now to finish the card off and add just a little bit of sparkle, I'm adding some Spectrum Noir sparkle pen over the top of the flowers as well as at the top of that headdress of the pineapple there. I added some sparkling clear sequins as well and a little gold bow that I tied using some gold thread that matches that thread at the top of that vellum piece there. So that finishes my card for today. I just love the stamped foil accents. I hope that that gave you some tips on creating some stamped foil accents on your card. This video is a part of a blog hop celebrating the Essentials by Ellen late summer 2016 release. I have a couple more cards over at my blog. I'm giving you a sneak peek of those here. Be sure to head on over to my blog because I have more still shots, more information, more projects, and information on giveaways over there. I will also have links to all the products used in these projects, and I will link the featured products in the description at YouTube. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.